From the outside, my life with Olivia looked like a dream. We had love, success, and a beautiful home. Friends often told us we were the perfect couple. Our children were bright and well-behaved, and we had everything we thought we wanted. But behind closed doors, cracks had already begun to form. There were moments of tension that we never fully addressed, times when I felt unheard, when Olivia's sharp words cut deeper than she realized, and when I began to feel like a guest in my own marriage. I ignored the discomfort, convincing myself that all couples had their ups and downs. I wanted to believe we were just going through a phase. One morning, Olivia approached me with an idea. She suggested we take a vacation, just the two of us. She said it would be a chance to reconnect, to escape the routine, and spend time alone. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her smile was that same captivating smile that once made me fall for her. She insisted on planning everything, telling me to just relax and trust her. I hesitated for a second, but her enthusiasm was contagious. I agreed, thinking maybe this trip would help us find our way back to each other. When we arrived at the resort, the place was stunning: lush greenery, ocean views, and every luxury you could imagine. I was genuinely impressed. But that feeling didn't last. As we reached the reception desk, I noticed several familiar faces approaching us with wide grins. It took me a moment to register that they were Olivia's friends, people I'd met briefly at parties, but never felt particularly close to. She hadn't mentioned inviting anyone. I stood there, stunned, as she cheerfully introduced them and explained that they'd be joining us for the getaway. I smiled politely, hiding the tightness growing in my chest. What was supposed to be a romantic escape had suddenly become a group vacation. That evening, we all gathered for dinner. The table was lively, too lively. Olivia was at the center of every conversation, laughing, telling stories, and soaking in the attention. Her friends adored her, and they made it clear that I was an afterthought. I sat quietly, nursing my drink, nodding along, but I felt invisible. Every now and then, Olivia would glance at me and flash a smile, but it felt empty, performative. I wasn't part of her world that night. I was just a placeholder, someone filling a chair. The next morning, I checked our room charges out of habit. What I saw made my stomach churn. The entire resort stay, the rooms, meals, activities, was being billed to my credit card. I hadn't authorized it, hadn't even been asked. When I confronted Olivia, she shrugged, brushing it off as if it were nothing. "You're always so good with money," she said. "I figured you wouldn't mind." I stood there speechless, anger and disbelief battling inside me. And then she dropped another surprise. She wouldn't be staying with me in our room. She had arranged to bunk with her friends for the rest of the trip. Her tone was casual, as though this was all perfectly normal. But to me, it was a final slap in the face. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the waves crash in the distance, and thought about the years I had spent trying to hold our marriage together. I thought about the trust one had given Olivia, how easily she had taken advantage of it. I realized that whatever love we once had was now buried under layers of disregard and manipulation. And that realization brought clarity. I got up early the next morning, canceled her access to our shared accounts, packed my things, and left the resort without saying goodbye. Back home, I began taking steps toward a divorce. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but it was also necessary. I focused on my role as a father, poured my energy into my children, and started rebuilding the life I had lost piece by piece. There were moments of guilt and self-doubt, but they were quickly replaced by a growing sense of peace. I was no longer walking on eggshells, no longer pretending everything was fine. Meanwhile, Olivia's world began to shift. Without the financial cushion and constant admiration she was used to, her friends slowly began to drift away. The party stopped. The social media posts faded. She tried reaching out to the children, but they were hesitant, unsure of the change in her. She struggled to find steady work and had to confront a reality she had long avoided, one where charm and beauty alone weren't enough. She was forced to look at her life and the choices that had brought her here. Over time, Olivia began to make small efforts to change. She showed up to the kids' events, tried to reconnect in quiet, unpolished ways. And I gave her space to do that. Not for us, but for the children, who deserve to have both parents in their lives. As for me, I met someone new, Emily. She was gentle, kind, and saw me for who I really was. There were no games, no pretenses. Just real connection. With her, I felt seen. My children warmed to her quickly, sensing her warmth and sincerity. She didn't try to replace anyone. She simply became a part of our lives naturally, like a soft breeze that carries peace with it. In the end, the divorce became more than just an ending. It was a beginning for both of us. Olivia learned that life demanded more than appearances, and I rediscovered who I was without the weight of constant compromise. I found joy in the simple things again, cooking dinner with my kids, laughing over board games, taking walks with Emily. I found freedom. I've come to accept everything that happened, not with bitterness, but with understanding. I'm grateful for the lessons, even the painful ones. They taught me the value of self-respect, the power of forgiveness, and the importance of living truthfully. My life now is quieter, simpler, and more real. And that, finally, is enough. There were still tough days, times when I questioned whether I had made the right choices. Divorce is never easy, especially when children are involved. I worried about how it might affect them, how Olivia and I would co-parent, and whether I was strong enough to rebuild everything from the ground up. But with each passing week, I grew more certain that walking away from a relationship that had become toxic wasn't selfish. It was necessary. At first, Olivia resisted the divorce proceedings. She tried to talk me out of it, promising to change, to make things better. But I had heard those words before, always followed by brief improvements and longer stretches of disappointment. This time, I stood firm. I didn't yell or argue. I simply explained that I couldn't keep sacrificing my peace and self-worth just to keep a broken image intact. Olivia eventually accepted it, though I could tell it stung her pride more than her heart. Our children were confused at first. I had to sit them down and gently explain that their mother and I wouldn't be living together anymore. I made it clear that it wasn't their fault and that both of us still loved them deeply. They cried, and I held them close, promising that no matter what changed, I would always be there for them. Slowly, they adjusted. They began to see that our home was more relaxed, that I was more present, more attentive. And over time, they started to feel safer in the quiet stability we had created. Olivia struggled with the new responsibilities. She wasn't used to managing everything on her own. There were missed appointments, forgotten school projects, and a few emotional outbursts. But eventually, she began to step up. She found a job that gave her purpose, and she began to show up more consistently for the kids. I watched from a distance, offering help when necessary, but mostly letting her find her own footing. It wasn't easy for her, but it was real. My relationship with Emily continued to blossom. She never tried to fill Olivia's place or overstep with the children. She simply offered support, love, and quiet strength. With her, I laughed again, genuine, full-bodied laughter that I hadn't felt in years. She reminded me of who I used to be before I became so consumed by keeping a sinking marriage afloat. We took things slow, careful not to disrupt the balance we were building. But every moment with her felt like confirmation that love, when done right, could be healing. Years passed, and the dust settled. Olivia and I found a rhythm in co-parenting. We no longer fought or blamed each other. We communicated out of respect, and though there was no friendship between us, there was a civil understanding. The bitterness faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I think we both realized that we were never meant to stay together, not in the way we had tried to force it. Looking back now, I can see how everything happened for a reason. The illusion of perfection had to break so that I could uncover what real happiness felt like. I used to think that staying in a relationship, no matter how broken, was a sign of strength. But I learned that true strength lies in knowing when to walk away. Now, my days are filled with small joys, morning coffee in silence, reading bedtime stories to my children, watching them grow into thoughtful, kind-hearted people. I find peace in the ordinary, fulfillment in the simple. My life may not look perfect from the outside anymore, but it feels right on the inside, and that's what truly matters. I've forgiven Olivia, not because she asked for it, but because holding on to anger would only weigh me down. I've forgiven myself too, for the years I lost, for the times I stayed silent, for not leaving sooner. That forgiveness set me free. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I'm no longer pretending. I'm no longer living a life that's meant to impress others. I've found clarity, honesty, and love for myself, for my children, and for the woman who saw the man I had forgotten I could be. This is my real life now, imperfect, unpredictable, and beautifully mine.